Zelenskyy will address the U.S. military in Washington as funding for Ukraine's war runs out.
Here's a summary of the article.
Washington. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy kicked off a quick visit to Washington on Monday, warning in a speech to a defense university that Russia may be fighting in Ukraine but its real target is freedom, in America and around the world. He also issued a personal plea for Congress to break its deadlock and approve continued support for Ukraine. His time in Washington, which will include meetings on Tuesday at the White House and with Congress, is part of a last-minute push by the Biden administration to convince lawmakers to pass a supplemental funding bill, as officials warn that the money for Ukraine is running out. President Joe Biden has asked Congress for $61.4 billion for wartime funding for Ukraine as part of a $110 billion package that also includes money for Israel and other national security priorities. The U.S. has already provided Ukraine $111 billion for its fight against Russia's 2022 invasion. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who introduced the Ukrainian president, said America's commitment to Ukraine is unshakable and supporting the war is critical to ensuring the security of the U.S. and its allies. With Congress in its final work week before leaving for the holidays, questions remain as to whether Republicans will be able to come to an agreement on any rounds of future funding for Ukraine or Israel without White House concessions on additional border security as illegal crossings surge.
This post received a score of 4,200, with an upvote ratio of 94%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Keeping sending Ukraine our old weapons. We could use newer and fresher ones anyways, and it's not our troops dying to keep the evil empire back.
It's actually more expensive to destroy them or store them.
So that's why we've just been abandoning so much hardware in the Middle East for groups like ISIS to arm themselves with.
Well, we also had them sold back to us a few times.
It's only pennies on the dollar to destroy Russia. You'll never get a better deal.
I feel that people who complain about us sending money to Ukraine often lack any clear idea as to what we ought to be doing with the money instead. Spend it on U.S. citizens. That's a great sentiment, but it's meaningless when it's aimless.
What does that mean? Trump diverted money Congress earmarked for defense to build a border wall. So that case ended up in the Supreme Court. The SC said, "Fine by me," so it was allowed. At the time, many GOP were concerned in the future a Dem president could declare a climate change emergency and pull funds for that. At least in this case it could be looked at as kind of defending the U.S.
I get the sentiment. I just fucking hate it. We need to rebuild guardrails on power. I get that it might be worth it considering the stakes. It does most definitely set an awful precedent.
The only way to build guardrails is make both sides believe they're necessary. If Biden abusing power to address climate change or fight Russia does that, then it's a win-win. Because the Republicans aren't gonna all of a sudden play by the rules just because the Democrats are.
I watch with dread the way our Australian parties pick up and implement American political shitfuckery. Specifically the half-time, change sides policy about face as soon as they get into or out of power.
There should be a new logical fallacy or paradox for this situation. Don't send weapons because they're losing, but they're losing because you're not sending weapons. Criticize sending weapons because of a failed counteroffensive when the only reason it failed was they didn't show up fast enough to thwart the building of minefields.
Pretty sure it's just called a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It should be noted that much of the equipment the US has supplied was very close to its stale date and was due for decommissioning. The bean counters that run things don't care how this equipment or asset comes off the books, whether through sale, donation, or decommissioning, just that they come off the books. Most of the money earmarked for Ukraine is actually being used to produce the next generation of weapons, which creates jobs and economic activity in America.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.